Hi, I'm John Call, and I'm here with another Box Elder School District training for RISE benchmark data. The end of my last video, we talked about how to get into RISE and how to do a lot of the features, printing test tickets and such. Now we're going to talk about how we get to the data, how we can look at it and compare and find students' answers and other things. Let's go ahead and get started with our Utah RISE benchmark data lesson or presentation. Okay, our learning objectives today. First, we want to go over and give you a reminder of how to log in to RISE. Second, the importance of a pretest and post-test and test reasons as you are logging in and giving the test. Third, we'll talk about where's my data? Where do I find it? Because the students don't see their scores at the end of the benchmark, so it's important that you can find it and give the students the data that they need or would like to know. Normally they want to know how well they did. And fourth, if I give a pretest and a post-test, how can I see growth? How can I see longitudinal data? And we will go over that as well. So first off, how do we log in? You may have gotten an email that looks like this to log in. I really just recommend going to utahrise.org. It's the new Utah RISE, this time proctored by someone else for 2019-2020 school year. So here we go. This is what the website looks like. It works out really nice. Everything works out really great. So it's been really nice to use. So anyways, to log in, you click on any of these boxes with these lock boxes on them, and it will ask you to log in. If you haven't logged in, you don't know your email or password, just click forgot your password. Even if it is your first time logging in, click forget your that you forgot your password. Send in your school district email and submit it. You'll get it's actually pretty quick as long as the school district hasn't blacklisted them, because they send a lot of emails for just enter codes and stuff. You'll actually follow the original procedure, and then when you get there again, you actually have to OK the browser, and they give you this 6-digit code that you need to type in and make everything work. So it's not a big deal. It just is that second layer of security. It does take a little bit of time, but as soon as you've OK'd one browser on one machine, like your teacher machine, you won't need to do it again. It does take a little bit of time. So go type that in, complete the registration process. Now we're going to talk about how to give a benchmark, because this is important on how the data ends up later. It helps us sift the data if we do this right. So again, to give the benchmark, we click on test administration, select which school you're going to. I teach at Bear River Middle School. And then we go on to click go. And again, the pop-up blockers are always there. I'll disable the pop-up blocker and refresh the page, go through it, and then we pull up to this page. Really quick to get in, select benchmark modules and pick the benchmark module you're going to give. I'm an 8th grade math teacher, so I gave this 8th grade expressions and equations A. You'll notice that they do give two parts, and this was intentional so that you can give a pre-test and a post-test. And this is what we're going to mean for the longitudinal data, in that we do need to use both if we're going to want to see growth. And they are different between the two, and we can compare what's going on there. So we select the one you want to give. This one for 8th grade, that is the one I gave. And then select Start Live, RISE Live Test Session. So now this is the really important part. Here it is. Session attributes and test reasons is unassigned as the default. And I made a mistake when I gave my benchmarks, and I called them either pre-test or post-test, but one class I accidentally left unassigned as I was in a hurry getting them set up, and it just makes my data a little harder to work with. So I highly suggest paying attention and making sure you mark it what you need to. So if it's a pre-test, mark it as pre-test. If it's a post-test, mark it as a post-test. And that just helps the data sorting do later. And this is great to show growth. It makes it really easy. So then select if it's a pretest or post-test, select that, and then click OK. All right. Now hopefully then you go through it. We've already talked about how we go and give the test. The students don't see their scores. So where are their scores? Where's their data? So go ahead and select reporting. Now this is where I think, yeah. So let's go ahead and give. Oh, I said we're going to be in a different presentation. It's this one. Let's go ahead and I'm going to exit this presentation. Let's go over to the portal and do this together if you'd like. So I'm going to go ahead and click on reporting, and I'm going to log in with secure login. Now I've already okayed this browser. It is I've already done that code thing to give it a second level of security. Now when I log in, I'm going to select my role. I'm a teacher, so that's what TE stands for. At Bear River Middle School, I select that and click continue. And it pulls it up. Now you're going to see a lot of blurred out things on my screen. I just felt like this was the best way to show you how dynamic the data is. So I'm sorry that you're going to see blurred out sections. This bottom part is your students table, and you see that we have the students. Well, you don't see it, but the students are listed there. If I hide that, I think we could unblock it. But yeah, so my students are no longer listed there. You can hide that. Now we want to see how did my students do. Now you'll see actually it's really interesting. So we have the 3 tests, well 2 tests that I gave, and you see the reasons, and it's grouped it. So even though I gave them at different times, as long as I took the same test on the same day and gave it the same test reason, it groups it. So you see I have 105 students who took the post-test for benchmark module equations and expressions B. And then this is the one class I forgot, and accidentally the 28 students who it should say post-test, but I left it as unassigned. We can still look at the data longitudinally. It just isn't going to be all groups together because of my mistake. But let's go ahead and first, before longitudinal, just where is the data? Let's go ahead and look at the pre-test data we have here, and click on benchmark module math, just that one, whatever test you want to look at. And you'll see again I'm going to blur out. Oh, so far I don't have anything blurred out. Good. And we actually can look and see a bunch of different things. So as my class looks, we can see actually my classes are listed here. And one thing that's really nice to see is that they made it easy to find what hour I'm doing. I know this is a 7th, 8th grade issue normally, maybe 6th grade also. But you can see here this 01 at the end of my big long number there stands for first hour. The 04 stands for fourth hour. 03 stands for third, and 05 stands for fifth. You'll notice this one was a little long, and it looks like it's, if I highlight it, you can see that on the end it says 06, so that's my 6th hour. So I can actually look at broken down just by hour, how well did they do. And you see that the score was out of 10. And what's really cool is even if you're going to do this as a school, we could see data from your school and data from the district. So far, I'm the only one in the district and school who's done this. But we can see that's what's going on there. So that's kind of a fun thing you can kind of compare and see how you've done with those around you. So to look and see how we did, first, let's show you the first. So there's only 10 questions, so 5 of them the students did best on, 5 the students did worse on. But that's how they've broken it apart, and it kind of helps you do a little item analysis. So if you click on that plus there, you can see overall my students are, on item number 1, this is the best again. Item number 1, 88% of my students got that question right. Number 5, item number 5, my students, 91% of my students got that right. Item number 6, 7 and 8, so on and so forth. And you see that, so that those decimals actually stand for percents, how well they did. All right. Now I can also go back and look and see, well, that's good, so I know I did well on those ones. And if you're wondering what the items are, you would click on these numbers and it would actually pull it up and let you see the question. Now I'm not going to do that because I just have to blur it out, so it's useless to do on this. But that's something you can look at and see, oh, that was the question that my students did well on. Now let's go ahead and open up, just hit plus on this next one over, and it's items on which your students performed the worst. So again, it's the other half of the problems. So as we look at it, we can see that question number 2, only 40% of my students got question number 2 right. Ooh, that's a question I should look at and maybe look a little closer. Oh yeah, question number 10, what's that? And like that was only 1/4 or 25% of my students. You can tell I'm a math teacher. Only 25% of my students got that right. So what was that question? I can click on that and see what it is. But now, what if I want to look closer? I want to see how did my students do? So let's click on my hour. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my first hour class. Again, now we're going to see blurred information here when this pulls up because we can't really see it. But now you'll see kind of down below here, we have my students listed with their score out of 10, which is nice if you wanted to kind of give students a quick score. Oh, you did 7 out of 10. You're at or near standard. Oh, you did 4 out of 10. We're struggling a little bit in this. But we can even break it down further and see like how did they on those questions that they did best on just by this hour. Now this has changed like because it might be overall my students may have done better on different things by hour, and I can see, oh, first hour actually did better on question number 3 than second hour did, and we can look at that data this way. So you can see here that my students, or like how did my students do, and kind of see where they're at. Now, if I click over here, we can actually see the total items. So I can actually tell like every single question that every student got. So the 1 means they got it right, the 0 means they got it wrong. And you can see that that's, if you add those up, like so if we count the ones 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 right out of 10, you can actually click and see how they answered. If you want to dive into that far and see what's going on with that. And that just kind of as that information as a teacher. So that's where this kind of stands. We can look and find those kind of questions and see how did students do on the best answered? How did students do on the worst answered? And we can kind of see how we did. So overall for this class, we can see, oh, I also really love these other items. Oh, sorry, one thing I did notice that is a little buggy. But if you have all of them opened, you have like, oh, these are the 5 best, these are the 5 worst, and then total items goes off the screen, but I don't have a scroll bar to move it so like see those. So you have to close these to be able to see the total items, if that makes sense. Just a little issue that arises with that. So we have then, we can look at our students' individual scores because they don't see them. If we want to give that to them and let them see them, this is where we would find that data. You can also dive into like, this is this question. Ooh, they didn't do so great, right? Now, as you look this time on question number 10, only 22% of my students got it right. So this hour struggled a little more than my previous hours as we were looking at them that were like at generally 25%. So kind of interesting. We can go back and see, open it up and kind of be like, okay, this is what it is, and we can troubleshoot and see how did my teaching affect that? Why didn't I hit that right? What were my students missing? And it's really great. So that's where the data is. Let me go back. Whenever you want to go back to, you've like pulled up a bunch of stuff, to go back, hit dashboard. It pulls it back up to the dashboard. We're back to everything we started with. And then again, just find the benchmark you're looking for. It has the date over here. It also even has it broken down by basically above standard, at or near standard, and then below standard by the colors. So green is good, yellow's close, and red's below. So that's what we have there now. So to find the data, click on it, then find the hour you're interested in, click on the hour, and there's all the data. Oh, if it pulls up, there's all the data we'll ever need. We have it by alphabetical order for students, and we have that information there listed. So, and you can go and pull those up. Really nice to help with item analysis, like this particular question, where are we at? Oh, this one I did really well on, this one I struggled on, and that would be a really good place to look. Now, let's go back and talk about the importance of that pre-test, post-test, and what we want to show longitudinal growth. All right, so now you'll notice that I did give two tests here. I gave expressions and equations version A as my pre-test, and expressions and equations B as my post-test. And now they are 2 different tests, but they're similar. You'll notice one thing that's interesting is expressions and equations, test A, has 10 questions, where test B only has 12. So there's a different number, and we'll kind of look and see how that goes. But we want to be able to say, hey, how did my students do? Did we see some growth? Did we see what's going on? Now you can kind of see over here, you can already kind of get some good ideas about what growth is happening. But now we do see my mistake on the test reason. The unassigned here makes it so the 28 students who took it, and I accidentally, in that test reason, selected unassigned because I was in a hurry. I have to compare them separately from the rest of my students. So just be careful as we're doing those test reasons not to accidentally make that mistake. So we move on. We're going to look at longitudinal data. So I can actually compare pre-test and post-test because they're similar. They're both expressions and equations A and then B. So we can do that. So, and you'll see like actually date. So November 7th I gave the pre-test, and November 19th I've recovered a lot of the material that was on there. We gave a post-test. Now, so let's go ahead and click on it. So how we get there is we click on the test just like we did before, and now we need to go into a student a class. So this is kind of the general overview. So going down into a class to see how did we do. Come on, pull up for me. Oh, I missed it. Let me see my mistake. So sorry. Okay, let's pull up the post test. That's going to be a little easier for us to see. Pull up the post test. Ah, there it is. I don't know what it is 100%, and it kind of disappears on me. I might be crazy, but it's hard to spot. I spent like 10 minutes looking for this thing, and I was like, I swear I found it. Okay, it's up here in this upper left corner. It's this clock symbol that lets us see the longitudinal data. And I don't know why before when I clicked it, it didn't work. So I'm just going to click here, and this was on the post-test reason. Maybe it's there that you find it. I'm not sure. So I'm going to click on that. Now you see that it actually pulls up all 3 tests that I've given and actually automatically highlights and says, okay, we have a pre-test data and we have post-test data here, and it selects it. Now, interesting enough, like with students, I've had like students who were gone, students who weren't, all that stuff. It only says that we're going to see data on 82 students because I only had 82 students who did both the pre-test and the post-test. So you can actually select it, and we'll kind of come back to this in a second. Let's go ahead and generate the report with the 82 students that I have and see how things changed. Now, as we look at this, my first score was 7, and my second score went to 8. So we're definitely seeing growth now. I'm a math teacher, and I think some of you can kind of see an issue that happened here. The first test was out of 10. The second test was out of 12. And I don't know if your math lines up right to really show growth from going from a 70% to going from 8 out of 12, which I believe is 67%. That's pretty close to the same thing. But I think there's some silver lining here that we need to look at, with my data at least. I'm not sure what your data will say. And they do try to keep it. So you do see that they have it listed there at the out of 10 versus out of 12. But let's go ahead and look at it. So the score I'm not really buying as being a good sign, but I actually really like these tables. So if we click up here, and now it says performance, I think we can see a really good trend for my students over this. So before, we see that I had 37 students percent who were above the standard, and then after it jumped up to 60%. Now that's a really good sign for me, saying, okay, yeah, okay, we had an issue with the number. It doesn't like translate exactly. That's what I mean, that they're similar tests, but they're not exactly the same. But then we can see this is that actually, like we see it, the amount of people below standard were at 22%, and it dropped to 7%. So that's a really good sign too, is that I'm moving people up that ladder, right? And so we're seeing, oh good, we are seeing some growth there over that period, basically when we taught a good portion of this material. So we do see, yeah, they learned stuff. They knew some of it before. Again, this is kind of a broad topic in 8th grade math, so it was just, we covered one topic. I think we were covering scientific notation at the time, and there just happened to be some scientific notation on this version of the quizzes, and so I think that really helped out. But there were other things too that they were tested on that we maybe didn't cover yet, like that question 10, by chance. Why all my students missed it. So we kind of see that, and I really like that. Now, so again, so the overall, let's switch back to score, so you can kind of see like how did they do, all right? So yeah, it does make it at least look like they're improving, but anyways, we'll be careful here. Now, if I want to go back, if I want to print off a report, I can print off a report. This isn't really so useful here, but we can print it if you'd like. Now, if we click on this, the report options, it takes us back to our original data where we were making the selection. Now, I have those 28 students who I accidentally marked it as unassigned. So let me show you what we can do. So I remove the post-test, and I click the unassigned. And now you'll see that I have 25 students there who took both the post-test and the pre-test and the post-test. So click Generate Report. We see the same thing. This actually looks the same, so 7 to 8. And then when we click this, we actually see, like, out of these 25 students who took both, we see a really big jump, 40% above standard to 60% again, kind of an interesting number there that happened there. At or near standard was 28%, and the other one was 36%, and only 4% below standard after that unit we covered. So we see kind of a really good trend upwards with that. So that's something we can always say is like, how are my students doing, and what's that going on? Now, that longitudinal button is the hardest button to find in this whole thing. I don't know why it's so hard. let's go back to dashboard, and I'm going to click on that other one and see if it just disappears and randomly it just doesn't like me. So let's click on this one and see expressions and equations A is my pretest. Let's see if it does show me that longitudinal option. Yeah, so on the pretest, the longitudinal option isn't there. Let me head back to my dashboard again, and let's see the unassigned option. So unassigned, it's there. So apparently you have to click on the either an unassigned test or so now it's all there. It's good. Okay, yeah, just the same thing we were in. That's why I was like really confused. Why am I not finding this? So that's good I found it for you. So make sure when we're going back to dashboard, we want to do a longitudinal comparison. And we look at this and we can select this here. We select the test that is a post test or an unassigned test. And we can click on that history button, the clock here, and then it pulls up. Now you'll notice that I can click here this unassigned button too. And you're like, hey, let's click that. And so when I do, my selected students goes to 0 because I have 0 students who took all 3 of those. Does that make sense? So if I wanted to show like 3 different versions of this test that we've given, then I could actually do that with this option. So the pretest, post-test, and other things there, you could actually track it. Unfortunately, it doesn't like do individual points, right? If a student happened to only take 2 of the 3, it would kick them out of that data. So that's kind of a little issue with that. But that's where we can go and generate reports at, especially that longitudinal little clock button that disappears on you if you click in the wrong spot. We found it, and so we're good. Again, you can also, like as a quick check, we can check there. Okay, so we've covered. Let's check and make sure we got everything we're supposed to. All right. So first, our learning objective. Okay, we talked about how to log in, the importance of a pretest and post-test with test reasons. Again, it just helps us with the data. If I had clicked that, and I really wish I could go back and convince myself to click the right button at that instant. I can't, so it's just there. It just is really helpful with sorting the data. We talked about where the data is. You can look up individual students, what questions they answered right and wrong. If you just want to kind of get their overall score, you can do that. Oh, we can also break it, individual students' information apart by standard and even like really far. Let's go look at that again because we missed that. And then we showed number 4. Sorry, we're going to have to revisit number 3. Number 4, we already showed how if we give a pretest and a post-test, how we can see growth. So let's go back to our dashboard and see what I'm talking about with this. So if we go on to my pretest here, and I want to see how certain students did. Let's go into a class. Here I'm going into my first hour here. If it pulls up. Okay, now over here on the left-hand side, we have filters. So you can see expressions and equations are the only benchmarks I've given so far, and so then I'm just going to sort down to that. But we can actually look at clusters, so working with radicals and integer exponents. So I can select that. So I want to see like which of these questions actually apply to that. If I click apply, now we see the total items, and you see that this was out of 10. But only the first 7 fit into that category and into that cluster. Now, if we select that again, we can actually go from cluster down further to standard and say, okay, like know and apply properties of exponents. For example, like, anyways, those are like terrible math type things there. But yeah, like we're talking about exponents and things. So if we select that, if I select that and then click apply, then we see that, only question number 1 was dealing with that particular property of exponents. And we can see how our students did on those, if that makes sense. So we can see the total items there. You'll notice that it has, apparently it was in the items that we performed best on, and there weren't, because it was only 1, it wasn't in the worst category. Let's click over here and look at something a little more. I think, was it? Yeah, scientific notation was kind of a bigger one on this one. Did I apply it? No, only number 2 was there. And you can see, ooh, like my students didn't do so great on this one. 44% in this hour got it right. So I'm missing, 56% of them missed it. And we can kind of go into that. So that's nice, is we can break this apart by standard as we're looking at this particular thing. So by so we want to start over again. Clear clusters, go to domains, expressions, and equations. This time I want to look at Understand connections between proportional relationships, lines, and slope. Click apply, and we see the 2 questions that work with that 8 and 9 on that quiz, so on that benchmark. Anyways, so that is a nice way to break down our data and see what it is, and yeah, so that's what we got. So we've covered our learning objectives. Now let's talk about what's coming next as we're doing this. Okay, don't worry, there'll be more coming. Next thing we're going to talk about is reporting and using benchmarks in a PLC. So if me and my other 2 teachers in my PLC give the same quiz, how can we look at and compare data? How does that work? And what kind of adjustments can we make with that? Second thing coming up, we will be talking about the interim assessments that are actually predictive, that would give you a rough score as saying, you know, I'm not just going to give you a score of 7 out of 10. Instead, we're going to give your students scores of 1, 2, 3, 4, just like the actual summative test would be. And we'll also be giving you a summative spring meeting. We'll talk about that. That one will not, it might be recorded as well, but that one will be in person, face-to-face. So great. Well, thanks for staying in here with me, hanging out, even though, you know, that pesky clock button went away on me. So thanks, and have fun. We'll see you later.